Hello again, everyone. I'm Bruce Beck. Welcome back to Rutgers Basketball Weekly. Coming up in the next half hour, a look back at one of Rutgers' best victories of the season and a look ahead to a challenging road slate. With me, as always, Rutgers basketball coach Bob Wenzel. And Bob, all I have to say is 70-53, Rutgers over Notre Dame, and that says it all.
It does say it all, Bruce. It was a tremendous victory, and one where Notre Dame was coming into Rutgers on a high note, having beaten Syracuse very badly, and Garrity, fifth leading scorer in the nation, coming in. And it was a tremendous victory for us, a great defensive effort.
All right, let's take a look back at the Scarlet Knights taking on red-hot Garrity and Notre Dame at the rack. This ball game played on Saturday, and defense was a big story throughout this contest for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers.
It really was, and you know, Garrity was the story coming in, a birdish kind of player. We wanted to push the ball quickly, as this little series shows, and we get Hodgson shooting the ball. We want him shooting the ball quickly. We don't want him hesitant. He's much better when he does that. I'd even like to see him err on the side of taking too many shots.
Hodgson had 12 points, 4 boards, and 4 steals, but his big numbers were more on the defensive end. Look at that feed.
That was great. Those two playing together are really reminiscent a little bit of Billett and Santiago now. Earl Johnson and Jeff Billett, a freshman and a sophomore, and they're leading our team right now in scoring, and they're quite a good tandem in the backcourt.
And a little different role now for Billett. You want him pushing it, don't you?
Yes, we do, Bruce, and we made a subtle change in terms of bringing the ball up against retreating defenses, having Jeff bring it up and make some decisions on the break, and have Earl at the scoring end of things. What it's done is it's cut down on turnovers. On teams that do press us, however, Earl will be in the backcourt.
Well, tempers were flaring a little bit in this one early, Bobby.
Well, they were, and Garrity got frustrated, and we wanted to frustrate him. You make a great scorer play defense, and you frustrate him with your defense on him, and things like that can happen.
Earl Johnson burying a 3 there. Rutgers up 39-30 at the half, but the second half, you guys have one of your most explosive halves of the year.
We really did. Look at this defensive play right here by Johnson. He gets beat, doesn't give up on it, and slides in front to make the steal and throw it off Garrity for possession for Rutgers.
And Earl finishes on the other end.
He does. He's a guy, that's where we want, that's why when Billett brings the ball up the court, he has an opportunity to take the basket and have some pull-up jump shots, which is his good part of his game.
Garrity finally gets a hoop down low, but he finished with only 9 points on 3 for 16 shooting.
It's his low for the season, and he's a tough player, and he's going to have a lot more very, very good games. Look at this beautiful play right here.
And Billett will be the recipient. The ball finally pops back out, and he buries it. So the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers win it 70-53 over Notre Dame to improve to 6-3 on the season, 2-2 in conference play, and your backcourt combining for 37.
I mean, you look at those two guys right there, and that's tremendous play, both from three-point range, from shooting twos and assists, and not too many turnovers either by either player.
Let's take a look at the Notre Dame numbers from the ball game. You can see Garrity only 9 points, and the team shot just 31% from the field. Defensive field goal percentage I always consider more important than how many points you allow.
Absolutely, because that's an indicator of real good defense, and one player in double figures also is helpful. When you can keep a team with one guy in double figures, you're going to win most of the time.
So a big victory for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. You know, you talk about the Georgetown win, but this game was almost a dominant performance.
It really was. You know, I mean, it wasn't one of those ones where we eked by. It was a strong opponent coming into our building. The crowd responded in great fashion with their enthusiasm, and our players responded. And it was a kind of win where we took control of the game from the very beginning, and it was never in question.
And you made a quote after the ball game, "I don't remember seeing a better job defensively in all my years than the job that Hodgson did."
It really was, and you know, you've seen good defensive players, all of us who watch basketball. But as far as an individual performance on a top-rated guy, you know, you got the 5th leading scorer coming into your building. This is quite a challenge for us, and Hodgson took it seriously. He was quoted after the game as saying, "I had to play right through to the end because the guy could erupt at any particular time." And Garrity kept trying, but we did a terrific job, and Hodgson deserves all the credit.
So the victory puts Rutgers right in the thick of the Big East standings. Let's take a look at how things have unfolded thus far in the year in the Big East 7 and in the Big East 6. Rutgers 2-2 right now. That's very important because you want to get off quickly when you look at all the big monstrous road trips you have later.
Well, you do, and you know, this goes in cycles. You know, you're going to play some games at home, you're going to play a series of games on the road. When we had our homestand, we did well.
Miami, Seton Hall, and Syracuse complete the Big East 7. They are below Rutgers right now, and you can see the marks: Seton Hall at 1-4, and the Orangemen of Syracuse at 0-4. A surprising start for them. Big East 6. BC 4-1, Nova is 3-1, UConn 3-2. St. John's coming off a very nice victory over UConn in overtime.
Well, that was a surprising win, and St. John's has had 2 good wins in a row. They beat Pittsburgh at the Garden, and then went up to Storrs and played that game in the Gamble Pavilion on Connecticut's campus. And that's a tough place to play, and that was a very good win for St. John's. I think the Pittsburgh loss to St. John's coming from Hawaii, it was one of those ones where they lost their legs. They traveled 15, 18 hours on a plane, got off, played St. John's. They had an 18-point lead in the first half, and then ended up losing their legs, and St. John's just rambled back and beat them about 15. So I think the schedule beat Pittsburgh on that particular night.
Well, coming up next, Rutgers travels only 15 miles, but their next opponent is always a difficult one. The Tigers of Princeton. No more Pete Carrill, but the same old system. We'll take a look at those highlights when we come back. Welcome back to Rutgers Basketball Weekly. Scarlet Knights come off a high against Notre Dame, and then they have to take on the Princeton Tigers. And preparing for the Tigers in a couple of days is never easy, Bob.
Well, it really isn't. And, you know, we had one day to prepare for them, and then 2 practice sessions we could get in one day. And you know what? It was almost better not to have to prepare so much, because you can get a very negative psychological aspect when you're playing Princeton. They're famous for this backdoor business and this slow game and so on and so forth. And if you emphasize that too much with your team, I think you can get to the point where you're planting a negative seed in their minds. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to play our game, and it was a very, very good college basketball game.
Coach Bill Carmody, now the man replacing Pete Carrill for the Princeton Tigers. Let's go back to the ball game at Jadwin Gym, played on Monday night. It began kind of nicely, a warm exchange of handshakes. You know, you're not in the same league. It was almost like an international game. Where was the exchange of jerseys?
That's right. That's right.
Talk about the game early on.
Well, early on, you know, they got off to a pretty good start, and we got down by about 6 or 7 points early. But we shot threes. We shot better than threes than them for the game. We limited them to 7 for 22 from three-point range, and we were like 7 for 19. Of course, they're looking the back door. You can see Clark guarding the basket here, and made several blocks like that. We wanted him to come off their center when he was at the high post. And here we went. We changed defense, went a little zone. Earl hits only 2 three-pointers for the game, and here you can see Clark playing off again. His man now hits a three-point shot, and of course that's always the dilemma. When you have 5 guys who can make threes, they want to spread you out. They want to play one man close to the basket. What you have to do is play pretty good offense against Princeton, and when you do, you can be in the game with them.
Halftime, 28-22 Princeton, and they open up a little bit of a lead early in the second half, but then you start to chip away, and this becomes a heck of a ball game.
It really did, and we made a couple of threes. They missed a couple of threes, and we kept changing defense to try to keep them off balance a little bit, and we're pushing the ball here. Jeff hits Earl. This is what we were talking about in the opening about the combination of those 2 players. And we actually got a lead, and right here on Terry Mills's 3, we get a lead, but then the next 3 possessions we don't do anything much, and then they get the lead back. It was a seesaw game. 30 seconds of the game's actual playing on the clock determined who the outcome was going to, who the victor was going to be.
And down the stretch, the Princeton Tigers making those free throws, 9 for 10 in the last, 122. Princeton making the plays down the stretch, and the Tigers win it in a heck of an old-fashioned college hoop game for New Jersey, 71-66.
It really was, and there were a lot of Rutgers people out there. I think we had more Rutgers fans there than there were Princeton fans there, but it was a terrific game. Uncharacteristically, we forced them into 14 turnovers.
Here's a look at some of the numbers in the ballgame. I don't think you can really consider 22 in the first half as being a significant number because that's the way that the tempo was played. Again, your backcourt coming up big.
Yes, they did. And again, Billett and Earl Johnson combining, playing very, very well together. But the story of the game was as it usually is for Princeton, is they did control the ball when they had the lead.
And for Princeton, Steve Goodrich had 21 points inside. Got some help from Jesse Rosenfeld off the bench as well. They made only 7 for 22 from downtown and committed 14 turnovers, but they do come away with the W. And Bob, in looking back at this ball game, I mean, you really had a dilemma, because if you go up and play exclusively the three-point game, you can stop them in that respect, but then you got to worry about the back door. And they kind of hurt you on the inside instead of beating you on the perimeter.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. We decided to go single coverage, if you will, with Clark on Goodrich, and Goodrich played a very good game. If you don't do that and you come down and help a little bit, you expose yourself to their three-point shooting, which can be a little bit more dangerous, in my opinion, when you play against them. They did get Mitch Henderson back, whose father died earlier this year. He did not play against Carolina. Carolina beat them about 6 or 7 points. So we're playing against a Princeton team that's going to be in the NCAA tournament, a team that's a very, very quality team. And I was proud of the way our guys kept their poise. You can get a little frustrated against them, and we did not do that. We didn't come away with a victory, which is what we wanted to do, but we played them a very tight game. And since the league is the most important thing, we want to forget that game as quickly as possible afterwards.
It doesn't hurt your league, Mark. Don't worry about it. Coming up next, we'll check in to the video house, and we'll see what's going on with Rutgers in their preparation for opponents. Video is our topic when we come back. We are in the video age. There's no question about it. I know, because when I go home at night, I go upstairs and I find my kids with the Sony PlayStation. Bob Wenzel, video has clearly changed the role of a college basketball coach. I can't find you courtside anymore, can I?
No, you can't. 2 rules. The NCAA does not permit coaches to scout their opponents in person. And the Big East has a rule which requires the opponent to send their last 3 games, videotapes of their games, to the next opponent. So all of this is done on computer. All of the scouting is done by video.
And there's no question that college coaches must be productive when it comes to video, scouting, learning, getting ready for the next opponent.
Well, that's the whole idea. You know, if you can look at the other team's offenses and defenses and know what kind of game you're going to be in, you can adjust your game. You need to know the personnel. You need to know what moves particular players make, what the coach might do after a timeout, how they press, how they zone. So those are the things that you get from the information you get from these videos, and that enables you to get your game plan ready for the game.
For more on the video revolution, let's check in with Jeff House, assistant coach of the Scarlet Knights since 1993, and let's go behind the scenes.
Hey, Coach. Hey, Bruce. We're going to get ready for Pittsburgh now and get some breakdown stuff ready to go, and I'll try to take you through that as harmlessly as I can. We've got probably 12 to 15 of Pitt's games on tape, and what we like to try to do is, Coach is a big tape guy. He'll watch almost every game that Pitt has played before we play them. We'll break that down for the team so that they don't have to see every bit of that. They just have to see, what's important.
Boy, that says the story right there for St. John's. Better effort, though, by Lopez following. Taylor, hard to the hole, and Varga puts it away. Nice follow by Chad Varga.
With Pittsburgh having extra time, we've had 5 days prepared for it. We can start to get many of their offensive sets and things set for the team to watch, so they don't have to watch as much actual game footage. Coach and I and the rest of the staff will watch as much game footage as possible. We'll try to break down to where they're just in their transition and their half-court sets and get that edited out and take everything else out, and just so they can watch these different specific plays. What the computer allows us to do is simply take out anything that we don't want. If we're going to focus here on just Pittsburgh's offense, then all that Coach will have on a 20-minute tape is their offensive sequences back to back to back. And the team, instead of having to watch 5, 6 games of Pittsburgh, they'll only have to watch a 20-minute tape of the best highlights of those games prior to us, the key points that Coach wants to emphasize.
Defense has resulted in 4 easy buckets down the other end for St. John's. Shot clock at 8. And count it. Jordan to
the week prior to a game with Pittsburgh, we have a lot of extra time, so we can work together as a staff, and coach can watch the film, watch the breakdown, and then kind of plan out a game plan on the board with the staff in preparation for that game. The nice thing for me with my position is that I'm able to be on campus all the time with coach and work with him a lot on going over that game film, breaking down the film, and then throwing out ideas for how we best want to attack what all the different teams want to do. What we do is gather all the film that we can, both television and from what's called film exchange, from different sources around the country in Division I basketball, on every bit of film that we can. We'll get television tapes, we categorize them on our shelves by team, and then coach will go through and watch every game that he can in preparation for our upcoming opponents. As you get further into the Big East, we're very fortunate that all of the teams have many TV games. We can take out and get from different places companies that tape all the games that they can and get every one of those games. Also, the Big East has a policy where you share tapes among each other's, each team's school. So video is a great teaching tool, and with the change of the rule a few years ago where you cannot go and live scout opponents, everything is done through videotape. So we spend a great deal of time exchanging tapes and breaking it down and using it as a teaching tool for our team. So, Coach, it's now in your hands. You've got all the breakdown and the edits. Let's take it to him.
I like what Jeff said there. Computer takes out what you want. That makes a player look good or look bad.
That's right. That's right. You can edit however you want to edit, and you know it's highly involved. And what we do is what everyone else does. This is common practice among all Division I college basketball. And you call friends, and maybe a friend played against a team. I should also let people know that as a Rutgers coach, we play a Big East opponent. We are not permitted to send any of our Big East tapes to someone that is not in the league. So there's a little bit of a homey atmosphere involved in that also.
So if you can't find Bob Wenzel during the course of the year, you're down in that little room in the basement with all the clickers, right?
That's right, and that's what my eyes look like they do.
A little bloodshot today. When we come back, we'll check out more about Pittsburgh as we scout them for the upcoming weekend. So we're headed to the Steel City, not to check out Cordell Stewart or Jerome Bettis, but to talk about the Panthers. We'll be right back.
Cummings with an easy one. Look at his son bury his second shot of the year, and Trey will give them a 10-point lead. He said, "We're not playing with a lot of confidence."
Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, a couple of games upcoming on the road. Yes, things will get difficult. First stop is Pittsburgh, an improved team from a year ago, a team that was injured for much of last season, starting to come around, 8-7 overall, 2-2 in the league.
People refer to them as enigmatic, and they started the season off poorly. They have terrific wins over Michigan. They just beat Miami at home, and so they're on a good scheme right now, and they're playing good basketball. They had some players injured. Their center is out for our game, Mark Blunt, but they do have Chad Varga back, who is an outstanding power forward.
All right, let's talk about Wenzel's words in preparation for the Pitt Panthers and the things that are on Bob's mind as he prepares for this weekend's ball game.
Well, Varga being back is very important for them. Cummings is coming on, and he plays point guard for them, was a very highly recruited guy who did not have a good freshman year. And they play a lot of changing defenses. We're going to see some 1-3-1. We're going to see a matchup zone. We're going to see a little man-to-man, and we'll see a little full-court pressure, run and jump in the backcourt.
And the Cummings you're talking about is Vonteego Cummings, 27 points against St. John's. Sophomore guard, averaging 14.5 points per ball game. They also have a victory over UConn, so when you beat a quality opponent, you know, it gives you a little bit of confidence. You believe.
Well, it really does. And Gerald Jordan, who's their backup center, was a starter last year, and now that Blunt is out, they come in with a guy who has started almost the entire season last year, so it may not be a big positive from our viewpoint. What we have to do is play the way we've been playing. We've got to change defenses. Our backcourt has to give us good games, and we've got to get some scoring from the front court people.
All right, let's take a look at Pittsburgh in action. When you talk about Pittsburgh this year, you got to look at a team that's got a lot of different weapons, Coach, and that's one thing that you can't prepare for as well.
No, it isn't, and that's Jordan, a little left-handed baseline shot by he's not a power center, but he does a good job. This is Jason Mail, their outstanding outside shooter, hit 9 threes in a game this year. This is the coach's son, Willard, and this is Varga, whom I spoke about earlier. He's a very powerful inside force. We did beat Pitt twice last year. We had 2 one-point games against them. Here they played well against Carolina for about 32, 33 minutes. But we did have great success against Pittsburgh last year, and I think everybody has some fond memories of Damon Santiago hitting a 3 at the buzzer to beat them on the road.
And here's some action against St. John's. And again, Vonteego Cummings with the bucket. So Pittsburgh comes into this ball game, 1 game above 500, 2-2 in the league. And I guess they're kind of where you are right now, trying to get to the upper echelon of the league.
They have a little bit more experience than we do. You know, Varga's a senior and Jordan's a senior. Their backcourt with Kelly Taylor and Vonteego Cummings is young. Mail is a senior. So they're a little bit more experienced than we are. But hopefully we're going to play our best when we go out there.
After Pittsburgh, it's on to West Virginia, if you can find Morgantown. It's not an easy ride from the Pittsburgh airport, especially this time of year. West Virginia, another team that's improved this year. They're 8-3 overall, 2-2 in the league. And here's Wenzel's words on the West Virginia Mountaineers.
They want a high-tempo game. They're a trapping, pressing team. They want the game to be in the 90s, and they're a very, very good team on the offensive boards. Their recent game against Seton Hall, they really beat them pretty soundly, 91-75 or 76. Gordon Malone, 6'11" guy, gets about 6 or 7 dunks a game, has been suspended 2 or 3 times during the course of the season. Selden Jefferson, a very
point guard, New York kid.
Yep, very experienced guy, and he's been around a long time. And Damian Owens is a guy who is their small forward, and that's the most difficult matchup for us in this game. Very quick, good outside shooter, take it to the basket player.
Wednesday's game on ESPN at West Virginia, 9 o'clock start. The Pittsburgh ball game is on Sports Channel, 5 o'clock. All right, Coach, good luck. You go on the road. Hopefully you follow off and get a little bit of a springboard off the Notre Dame victory.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm looking forward to this road trip.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. That's it for this edition of Rutgers Basketball Weekly. I'm Bruce Beck for the coach. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Down by 1, 14 seconds left. They steal the inbounds. Freshman Earl Johnson, the clutch three-pointer. The Scarlet Knights upset the Mountaineers, 58-56. And UConn says it's back.
Virginia. Fans are celebrating a 4-point lead with 15 seconds to go, but Rutgers had other ideas. A three-pointer cut it to 1. Then they steal the inbounds, got it to Earl Johnson. The pride of Portchester hits the 3 and the winner.
We got a lot of threes early in the game. We executed perfectly.
Celebrating
Threes early in the game. We executed perfectly. We went to the 3rd and 4th option in our offense against their man-to-man defense, and that kept us with the ball more than they had the ball.
Rutgers up 20-6 at this point. They would finish the ball game 10 for 22 from downtown.
Three-point shooting is a big part of our game, and here in the second half, we substitute Brian Taylor, our walk-on, for fatigue purposes, and had to get Earl Johnson out of the game a little bit, hoping that at the end of the game he'd have good enough legs to keep playing.
Scarlet Knights of Rutgers doing a job on the offensive boards. First start for Johnny McCrimmon.
Big thing having McCrimmon back. It gives us 2 live 6'9" bodies, and here, of course, Earl gets this basket right at the end of the half, which gave us a little lift and a 1-point lead at halftime.
So it's a 31-30 ball game at the half. I thought that hoop was big. It gave you a little extra momentum. You had seen your lead dissipate at one point. Now you went back into the locker room on a high. What was your tone to the ball players?
Well, at that point, you know, we wanted to make sure that we kept the game where we wanted it. You know, we had said, well, where do we want? I asked Jeff Billett in practice, what's the score of this game going to be? And he said 67-61. We're going to win. I said, great. Okay. And then at halftime, I reminded everybody we were right where we needed to be, and we had to continue playing that same exact fashion. Also, we knew that they had the ball to start the second half, and getting a basket at the end of the half when they had the ball coming out in the second half is very important.
So West Virginia averaging over 85 points per ball game, well below their average at the half. Let's see the way the second half unfolded with the Scarlet Knights up by 1 as we begin play.
It was a terrific half. They made adjustments here. McCrimmon takes a charge on Gordon Malone. And I can't say you mentioned McCrimmon, but with he and Clark together, it gives us a little bit different situation than we had before. Great hustle all over the floor by both teams. Everybody wanted it. And here Terry hits Earl for a nice little three in transition.
Earl's three-point field goal puts the Scarlet Knights up 42-40. I thought if there was one guy that hurt you a little bit from West Virginia, Jared West, who played a very good ball game.
He really did, and he's been a very good player for them off the bench. They have a three-guard rotation, and he was in there most of the time. This guard played great in the game, Jeff Billett, and he did some remarkable things. That play right there is a tough play for him to make, being a small player. Here's
West
your man
hits
again.
this big bucket, Bobby. It's now 52-52, and things start to get interesting. The steal by West Virginia.
At this point, it looks crazy for us when they go down and get a 2-point lead, but there's still plenty of time. 1 minute and 8 seconds is an eternity in basketball.
West Virginia up by 4, and watch Billett come down and nail one.
This was big time. That takes a lot of brass, I'll tell you. And he came down and made that. And, of course, now we're right back where we want to be. This is the key play of the game.
Rutgers comes up with the steal, down by 1. There's Earl Johnson, looks down, spots up, and buries the three.
All 4 guys involved in that play, and you can see the excitement engendered by that shot. They had a 1-point lead. They tried to go long. We were trying for a 5-second count. We were able to tip it and get it back.
Still a chance for West Virginia.
Still a chance. Last play of the game. Jeff stays in front of him, makes him shoot an off-balance shot, and Sam goes up over the rim to get that rebound and seal the victory.
Over the backboard. And there's the celebration. I don't know if Jeff House gave you a kiss or not, but he almost killed you.
Well, I'll tell you, the joyous celebration at times like this for teams in sports, and certainly for us in this game, but other teams in their times, is a wonderful thing about athletics.
Here's a look at the game summary. Billett finishes the ball game with 16 points. Hodson 14, and he also did a good job on the boards. He was 6 for 9 from the field. Earl Johnson, Terry Mills each had 10. You can see their season best field goal percentage shooting for the ball game. The prior best half was against Georgetown. Both ended up in wins.
Well, there's something to that, and when you shoot well from the field, you do a good job. The big thing, of course, is keeping them way under their scoring.
And that's what they were. They were held well in check. Selden Jefferson shot only 3 for 8 from downtown. West, we mentioned, had the good game. Gordon Malone did a solid job on the boards. I have never seen a ball game where a team wins and ends up 0 for 4 from the foul line. Have you?
No. As a matter of fact, we were trying to find out if I have never been in a game when any team of mine has never made a foul shot. And of course, if you don't make foul shots, but you make 10 for 22 from three-point range, Bruce, that's going to help you a lot.
Well, the guy who made the game-winning shot, Earl Johnson, who has come up big this year, a very mature young man. And, Coach, what can you say about Earl?
Well, he had a terrific ending there, and he redeemed himself because we did set up a backdoor play for him earlier, and he missed a layup. His defense is improving. He does have the characteristic, and I don't know how you build this or whether it's genetic or what, when it's crunch time, he makes plays, and he certainly made the play right there at the end of that game.
One other quick note about that ball game. In that last steal, 4 guys touched the ball in a short period of time. Nobody panicked. I thought that was impressive.
It was very impressive. We got the tip, and Eric handled it precisely, got it to Rob. Rob hit it right up to Earl. Earl was wide open, and thankfully he took a good deep knee bend on that shot. At the end of a game, fatigue takes over. If you don't bend your knees well, it's tough to get your shot and get it to go in.
Up next, we'll check out the Big East scenario, and right now we've got a question for a young man to Coach Bob Wenzel about the Big East scene.
Hi, Coach Wenzel. This is Scott, and I want to know if you think that Boston College has any chance of winning the Big East this year.
Comcast. Welcome back to Rutgers Basketball Weekly. Bruce Beck with the Scarlet Knights head coach Bob Wenzel. And before the break, we heard the question about the Boston College Eagles. How good do you think they are?
Well, Boston College is a very, very fine team, and I think what makes them so good is they've played together for 3 or 4 years, and they're a very experienced team, and Donye Abrams is having a great senior season. So they've proven so far, they've got the best record so far, and they're not a team that overwhelms you, and so I think people are sometimes reticent to give them the kind of credit they deserve. But they've only lost 2 games, and they've only lost the one in the league.
All right, let's take a look at the standings in the Big East 7 first and see what has unfolded thus far in this 96-97 season. And you can see it's a very scrambled picture. And, Bob, you're right in the thick of things. Nobody dominant, everybody within the race.
Oh, there's no question. And this is so early that this is nice to look at, but it's meaningless because we have so many games to play. And it could be like that at the end of the year with a lot of teams having about an equal number of wins and losses.
It may be somewhat meaningless, but it's meaningful in the sense that you've already got 3 conference wins, and you never like to play catch-up as the year goes on.
Oh, no question. I mean, you've got to keep pace. And if we want to be at the top near the end, we've certainly got to take care of business as we go along. We did take care of business at home, and now we've been able to get a big road victory. So we've got to keep on keeping on.
All right, back to the standings. This time we go to the Big East 6 to take a look at the numbers there, where there are some giants on this side. Villanova has struggled a little bit out of the gate. BC up top, then Villanova, then UConn.
Well, West Virginia could have been in that group had they beaten Rutgers the other night. And BC's clearly above. Villanova, the most talented, but has lost 2 games already and have been beaten badly on the road at Providence and lost a squeaker at home against Miami. But still, I think that they're the team that most people feel is the most talented team in the league.
Would I say that RU has games remaining on the road against Nova, St. John's, Providence, Miami, Syracuse, and Georgetown? Do you flinch a little bit?
I flinch, but then I remember we got home games also. But so we're going to have more home games and road games the rest of the season from this point forward. So that's going to be very good. And to establish yourself and get a road victory against a team like West Virginia, very few people are going to win there this year. We did it in a 2-point game. Georgetown did it in a 2-point game. Other teams have gone in there and lost big. So that's a very, very important thing for the confidence of our young team.
Could that victory at West Virginia serve as a springboard for the rest of the year on the road?
I believe that it can. And the juxtaposition of how we played against West Virginia and Pittsburgh in those 2 consecutive games is very important for our team.
Earlier last week, the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers took on the Pitt Panthers at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. That ball game was played last Saturday. Let's go back and take a look at the highlights of this ball game. Jason Mayle of Pittsburgh really hurt you in this game with 6 threes. He had 24 points.
He did, and we started the game okay, but then they forced us out of our offense. We took some bad shots, and they turned those shots into fast breaks baskets. And that's where they scored most of their threes, in transition. In the second half of the game, we did a much, much better job. Here's the play at half, where we again score at halftime a 3 to bring it to 11. We were down like 16 points in the first half.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that didn't happen against West Virginia, and we accomplished that task. In the second half of the game, we battled back. We went to a special defense. We took Mayle out of the game pretty much in the second half.
Pretty much a box-and-one?
Box-and-one style kind of game, and they struggled against that. And at that point, that's when we made our run on them.
And when you made your run, Terry Mills was unconscious. He finished in this ball game with 22 points, and you'll see him hit a big 3, which I thought was from almost South Jersey.
Well, Terry is a fiery player, and here's the longest one of the night right there, about 27 feet. And that brings us to 3. And there were 2 times in the game where we had it to 3 and the ball, and at that juncture we had to foul, and their free throws were the difference in the game.
5 for 6 down the stretch for Pittsburgh from the line, 33 seconds of the ball game. That proved to be the difference. Let's take a look at some of the numbers from this ball game for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. Mills, as I mentioned, at 22. Billett had 15. Earl Johnson held in check a little bit, had only 6.
He really did, and he had 7 assists and only 1 turnover in the game, which is a good floor game for him. But we need him to score in the teens, and Terry had 19 in the second half. Without his offensive performance, we would have been in deep trouble in this game.
And for Pittsburgh, Mayle had 24. He did a good job against Montego Cummings. Was that Sam Sanders?
Yes, Sam Sanders guarded Cummings whenever we were in man, and we took him not completely out of the game. He still had a decent game, but he had been 29, 26, 24 in the games preceding our game. So Sanders was our defensive stopper in that game, and hopefully he's going to be that way in the future as well.
Bob, down the stretch here, just 1 for 7 from the field. That's where you have to execute better.
Yes, and you know the thing that happened in that game is that when they trapped us on a situation, we got out of it immediately, and then we tried to do things individually, and that's really not our style. in the West Virginia game, on the opposite hand, that's when they did those kinds of things, we stayed in it. And that's a mental thing. And from the neck up is where we've improved in the last 3 or 4 days.
All right, enough for the history of that ball game. Coming up next, we'll talk to a man whose major is history, whose minor is Italian. Rob Hodgson of the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers joins us when we come back. Welcome back to Rutgers Basketball Weekly. I'm Bruce Beck, and Rob Hodgson, the sophomore forward for the Scarlet Knights, joins us in the studio now. Rob having an outstanding season. He's had 7 straight double-figure ball games, and it's good to have you with us.
Oh, well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Are you charging a little bit right now, getting your confidence? Remember, you sat out the year. When you transfer, sometimes the first year back takes a little while to get your fluidity and your timing.
Well, I think so. You know, there's definitely a transition to be made. It had been some time since I had, played a full-length, a real intense competitive game in coming to Rutgers. And last year, I started off a little rocky, a little up and down, and started playing with more confidence, started playing better, down the stretch. And this year, I'm trying to take it from there and just build on that. And I feel comfortable with the progress so far.
Almost a double-double for Rob against West Virginia, 14 points, 8 or 9 boards. He shot 6 for 9 from the field. And I was teasing you earlier today saying, do you ever look for the shot a little bit more? I mean, 9 shots isn't bad, but that's a lot for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just, kind of came during the game. Being more aggressive offensively is something I've tried to work on, something I'm trying to be more consistent at. And it was just there during the West Virginia game, and it felt good.
It's really a total feel for a game for you, though. Defense, passing, ball handling. Do you enjoy all of the aspects of the game?
Yeah, I enjoy, I try to take pride in all facets of the game, not just offense but defense, and, and just doing, some of the little things that go with it.
Rob, the leading front court scorer for the Scarlet Knights. Let's take a look at some of the game footage from this past year and some of the action from Northeastern and Notre Dame, and just in general, your outside shot seems to be coming along nicely right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been working on that too, just whether it's during practice, during drills, or after practice, getting some extra shooting in. Right now, I feel real comfortable with the way it's going.
Defensively, against Garrity of Notre Dame, you put on a tremendous performance. Held him to 3 for 16 shooting, only 9 points. He was the leading scorer in the Big East, and you really shut him down.
Well, it was a challenge, and I think that brought it out. He's a very good player, and I look forward to it. And we tried to frustrate him, make him work, and it worked out right for us.
But there's no question when you do a solid defensive job, your teammates have to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, without a doubt. We had a lot of guys helping out. It was a whole team effort. It wasn't not just one-on-one all the time.
Hodgson with that spin move, where did that come from?
Well, it just kind of happened. You just kind of in the flow of the game, and just kind of happened.
Rob is the prototypical student athlete, a young man who has a 3.5 grade point average, a major in history, a minor in Italian. Tell the folks a little bit about carrying the burden of an academic load and still being a guy who's performing well on the basketball court.
Well, sometimes it's difficult. You don't always feel like studying or putting the effort in the books. Maybe after a long practice or a tough game. The last thing you really want to do is open the book and put your nose in it. But it has to be something that comes from within, comes from itself. Has to be important to you. And just like basketball, you put in, take an extra 100 jump shots, an extra 500 free throws, or whatnot. You got to, put in some extra time studying to succeed.
Now, a lot of players are on the 5 or 6 year plan. You are going to probably get your undergraduate degree in 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So how do you plan on continuing basketball and continuing your education at Rutgers and tying the two together?
Well, I'd like to, graduate undergraduate by sometime by the next year, and during next year also start graduate classes, and hopefully with any luck, doing some summer work, finish up and have a graduate degree to go along with it.
Well, there's a lot of guys here in the crew that could use some extra tutoring, so can we call upon your services when we need them?
Anytime. I'll leave my phone number after we're done here.
Rob, congratulations on your success both in the classroom and on the basketball court.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce.
All right, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look ahead to the week ahead. Scarlet Knights have to face the Wildcats this week. We'll find out more in a moment. I'll tell you, the coach is smiling more these days. When you come off a W and you come in to do a coach's show, it just makes it a little bit easier. But when I say Villanova, your smile might change rather quickly because you're taking on probably the most talented team in the league as far as athleticism.
It is, and it changes from a smile to a grimace of competition. And I'm looking forward to this game very much. And they're the deepest talented team. And from 1 to 10, they have size, they have biggest, they have Lawson, they have Tim Thomas, they have Cornegay. That's the biggest front line of 4 guys that you can rotate, having 2 or 3 of them in the game at all times. And then Alvin Williams is a pro guard. I mean, he's going to be in the NBA
Absolutely.
next year.
So it's Saturday, Rutgers at Villanova. Let's find out more about these Wildcats under Coach Steve Lapis. They really haven't gelled yet this year. I'd hate to see them later in the season when they start to get it together cohesively.
Well, they really have lost a couple of games now, and they do have some problems sometimes, but they have enough talent to overcome those. Everybody has the problem of gelling at some point during the season, and they've played a good, tough schedule. They've lost, just because they lost a game to Miami on a play at the end where Timmy called a timeout when they didn't have one, they lose on a technical foul. They might have won that game if it was in overtime.
How good is this kid, Tim Thomas?
He's ready, and I mean, he is an extremely talented inside-outside player. He gets numbers every single game, even when he doesn't particularly play well. When you're watching him and you say, well, he's not playing that well, he got 18 points and 14 rebounds.
So here are Wenzel's words on the Villanova Wildcat.
Well, they're super talented, as we've mentioned already, and the huge front line is going to give us trouble in terms of rebounding. And their depth is something that's very, very important in late game situations. We're going to need to substitute and keep the tide from going too much against us during those times when we substitute.
Depth is a key word in this league, especially if you get into foul trouble. But lately, you've gotten some bodies in there who have done some nice things. I mean, Mills is playing well, McCrimmon playing well, Sam Sanders. So you're getting to be more multidimensional.
Up until the West Virginia game, Mills and Sanders were key guys off the bench, and Blake we needed to give us more minutes. But now, since the emergence of Johnny McCrimmon and him coming back, I wish that we had him from the beginning of the season. But his coming back adds a lot. It helps rebounding-wise. It helps fatigue-wise for Clark. It enables me to play the 2 of them at the same time and go with Hodgson as a small forward and play big, which we might be able to do against Villanova.
All right, thoughts about the rematch against West Virginia? It's obviously nicer to have a rematch when you've won the front end of it.
Yeah, no question, especially when the front end was a road game. And, of course, the students will be back at that time, and we'll finally be back at the rack, playing back at the rack. We can't take anything for granted, obviously. We have to play the same way we played in the last game and try to play a little bit better.
And you've got to keep that home court edge, which you talked about at the beginning of the season, how important it is to reestablish the rack as a place where opponents don't want to play.
Well, that's been reestablished already. And, the 6-game homestand was a 5-1 one-loss record against some solid teams. And we've got to obviously keep that up. The solid teams are getting a little bit better now because all of these games are going to be Big East games.
All right, if there's one aspect, there's one thing that you really would like this club to get going, where you'd like to buckle down the hatches a bit for this second part of the Big East slate, what would it be?
Well, I think rebounding is the biggest thing. And the second biggest thing, really, that was a recent problem was controlling our offense to control the game. We're not a team that's going to score 90 in games, all right? So we have to be more precise with our half-court offense.
So that's it for Rutgers Basketball Weekly. Coach Bob Wenzel, congratulations on the victory against West Virginia, and good luck against Villanova.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
And we'll see you next week, everybody, for more of Rutgers Basketball Weekly.
we've got to develop